समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
Let me start out by wishing you all a wonderful, wonderful, happy Holi. Play hard, play safe, have a lot of fun, make some commotion, but not too much. Hurdang, as we call it, right? What is Holi without Hurdang? So have fun and stay safe. That said, let me also bring you back to an eye-opener that we have just seen. And this eye-opener has come from CSIS. CSIS is a reputed think tank in Washington that is Center for Strategic and International Studies. So CSIS has produced this paper. And it's a beautifully presented paper done probably in a software that we also use often at ThePrint called Shorthand, which uses visuals and text to do creative, easy storytelling. I'm sharing a link with you. You will also see some of it running on your screen as we talk. This tells you how China has stolen a march over the rest of the world in shipbuilding. Shipbuilding, not just naval shipbuilding, but also merchant shipbuilding, and also how it has combined the two pursuits. The domination in merchant shipbuilding, it's getting it so much money, not just money, but also technology. So it's using the money to build scale, and scale gives you economies. You get economies of scale. And then once you get the shipyards with this scale, you can also use them to build large naval vessels. So these become dual use shipyards. China has a lot of them. This graphic tells you the relative share of shipbuilding for major shipbuilding countries in the world. There you see China has the largest share, 40.3%. Japan is 22.2%. South Korea is the second highest, 31.5%. South Korea had the lead and the Chinese caught on. In fact, in 2000, just 25 years ago, Chinese did 5% of the global shipbuilding overall. Now they do nearly 50% of the global shipbuilding. Because while on this one, China's figure is only 40.3%, this is a figure, this is a data chart only for global merchant shipbuilding. So 40.6% of merchant shipbuilding, this is data for 2020. Since then, China's share has gone up. If you add to this naval shipbuilding, then the Chinese are well upwards of 50% of all shipbuilding in the world. Then South Korea 31.5%, Japan 22.2%, and then see that little thing at the top, like a wedge. That is rest of the world. What does the rest of the world build? 6.1%. 6.1%. If you look at the US, there is a report by US Trade Representative, a January report that says that US was the largest ship builder in the world in 1975. Now it builds no more than 5 ships in a year. You want to see the Chinese domination, and all of it works towards a dual use purpose because people place orders at these shipyards for humongous big commercial ships, container ships, etc., even cruise liners. The Chinese use that money to expand these shipyards, also the profit, because it's a state-run company, you use the profit to then not subsidize, but to enable the building of the largest and the most number of naval ships in the world. Now, how that is tipping the naval power balance, even between China and the US. I will soon be joined in by our defense editor, Snehesh Philip, who will explain a lot of that to you in granular detail. Please also read his story. You will see a screenshot on your screens just now, and we'll be sharing a link with you. You can see that also. There will also be a video. So in this case, what the Chinese are using is their approach of CMF. What is CMF? That is civil military fusion. That is something that Xi Jinping has been talking about. That everything that is civil should complement military needs and vice versa. And nowhere have the Chinese done it more successfully than in shipbuilding, because their domination of shipbuilding and the data that you see data in this report, but also the links to other articles that this report gives you. So one of the links gives us more granular percentages of this Chinese domination. For example, if you look at the total shipbuilding output, this is 2021, the total shipbuilding output, that is merchant vessels and naval. It is 47%, 47.2% of all shipbuilding in the world of all types. 47.2%. This was up by 4.1% over the previous year. Newly received orders for shipbuilding, that is 53.8% of all new shipbuilding orders in the entire world. 53.8% have come to China. Many of these are from Taiwan, by the way. This went up 5% from the previous year. And orders on hand, orders that the Chinese are implementing now, that they're constructing now, 47.6%. That is up 2.9% over the previous year. All of this is done by a large Chinese company. It's a humongous shipbuilding company, probably the biggest in the world. In fact, I'm sure the biggest in the world, which came into existence with the merger of 4 other large companies. It's a state-owned company. This has about 100 subsidiaries, which do various things, which do various kinds of shipbuilding. The company, the mega corp as it is, that's called China State Shipbuilding Corporation, or CSSC. Now, you want to understand the scale of CSSC's shipbuilding. It has built more shipping by tonnage in 2024 than the US shipbuilding industry has done since World War II. It is building at that kind of scale. This is really eye-opening, because Chinese believe in scale, and it's had impact on naval power balance also. If you see the current strength of the two navies, US and Chinese navies, see this graphic also taken from the CSIS paper. See how one line goes up, that is the PLA Navy, the Chinese Navy. That line goes up, and the US Navy lines come down because net number of ships has come down. Some have become obsolete, some too old. Donald Trump has been talking about rust on US Navy's ships. However, you can see where the lines cross each other. It is in 2013, maybe coincidentally the year that Xi Jinping takes over. It's in 2013 that this PLA line goes up and the America line comes down. That's it. That's a telltale visual point. November 2020, Trump banned Americans from investing in 31 Chinese companies linked to the PLA. No surprise that CSSC was also one of those companies. However, this has not affected CSSC because they are just getting so many orders. As I told you, they have 100 subsidiaries, but their biggest shipyards are in Dalian, Jiangnan, Hudong, Zhonghua, and Huanggu Wenchong. These shipyards at this point have 211 vessels under construction. 69% of these have been ordered by foreign companies, 69%. And this is data for 2019-2021. In the same shipyards, the Chinese Navy is building scores of surface combatants. So the same shipyards have billions of dollars of orders, and they are also building Chinese Navy's surface combatants. So in one of these, for example, at Jiangnan, and see this picture also from CSIS paper, in Jiangnan, cheek by jowl, if I can use that expression, for a humongous shipyard, the largest Chinese aircraft carrier, the largest and the most capable Chinese aircraft carrier called Type 003, because it's the third aircraft carrier that is being built alongside another vessel, another huge vessel with a telltale green hull. What is that? Why do I say the green hull is telltale? Because that indicates that it's a Taiwanese vessel. So Taiwanese have ordered for that merchant vessel to be built. These two are being built on adjoining jetties. So that takes you back to the idea of CMF, civil military fusion. This is the most striking visual evidence of that working out in real life. This order for the ship with the green hull was placed by Taiwan's Evergreen Marine Corporation. That's a mega shipping company. It already has 3 hulls under construction, as CSIS report shows, looking at commercial satellite imagery. And it also says that you can also see in that satellite imagery another 2 type 055 cruisers and 1 type 052 destroyer also being constructed on the same shipyard. And every country, it's not just the Taiwanese, the French have ordered mega ships to be built by the Chinese. The French, since 2017, have placed orders for 47 big ships in the same dry dock where 003 is now being built, the big aircraft carrier, Chinese aircraft carrier. The French built their largest container ship powered by LNG. So that tells you a story. It's the same dry dock that was used to build France's largest container ship, and there China is now building in the same dry dock. China has its largest aircraft carrier coming up. Again, technology transfer takes place from companies and countries that buy these ships from the Chinese. So French company Gas Transport and Technigas, obviously it's a gas transport company, they made technology available, their technology available to Chinese shipbuilders so they could make ships for them, because the French can't build ships of that size. How extensive this is, how extensive this commercial naval fusion is, you can see from the fact that some of the largest cruise ship operators in the world are also getting the Chinese the same docks to build their big cruise ships as well. One of them has in fact transferred its 2 older cruise ships to the dockyard so they can understand how to build new cruise ships there. And the same CSIS paper has a quote from Hu Wenming, who used to be chairman of China Shipbuilding Industries Corporation, which got merged with various companies to become CSSC, which we talked about in 2000. And this is a statement from 2017, from 8 years ago. And he said, and I quote, "The field of military products is very high-tech and innovative. So without the necessary amount of technology, it's very hard to enter the industry." So once again, from where does technology come? You can now see. That's why from where does this technology come? You can now see. Now that I've done this much show and tell to you, I'll now be joined by Snehesh Philip, who will tell us more on this, particularly on the naval aspect. Snehesh, you've heard all that I've said. You've read it. In fact, you read it first. Are you scared? Are you concerned?
Scared, yes. Concerned also, yes. Scared by seeing the magnitude of their operation. Concerned because India is far, far behind. Let's not get into the Indian aspect itself, where the Chinese Navy has overtaken the American Navy, which means that it has overtaken the Indian Navy by far, far longer margin. But, the fact is that, this was not surprising. But this report shows us the extent of which the civil military fusion has taken place in China. And this is not something which happened overnight. This is something that was initiated way back in 2001, 2002.
I see statements from Zhu Rongji, for example.
Yeah.
I see statements from other Chinese leaders in the past.
And in 2001, the then premier had said that they want to make China the biggest shipbuilding enterprise by 2015. The fact is that they achieved that target. And that's and that shows an insight into how China really operates. Now, since we talked about, the US Navy surpassing US Navy numbers, you mentioned that in 2013 is where, the 2 lines merged.
Crossed
Each other, right? As of 2022, the plan was operating a battle force fleet of 351 ships, surpassing the US Navy's 294.
So already bigger than US Navy. Plan, by the way, is PLA Navy.
Yeah, the PLA Navy.
The Chinese do this. The Air Force is also called PLAAF, PLA Air Force.
Yeah, so which means that the Chinese Navy as of 2022 was standing at 351, compare this to the Indian Navy. The Indian Navy, the original plan of the Indian Navy was to become a 200 ship strong force by 2027. In 2019, it cut down its numbers to its ambitions to just be
Its targeted number.
Its targeted numbers
or
from
aspirational number.
aspirational number from 200 to 170. That's the difference. The Chinese Navy is double of what the Indian Navy is in terms of strength.
And bigger than American Navy also.
And bigger than the American Navy. So, China has already taken the US Navy in terms of the hull count, in terms of numbers, and is rapidly closing the gap in fleet tonnage. That means in the amount of tonnage that the fleet has. And key technologies like vertical...
To simplify this, that will tell you the size of the ships. You can have 2,000 ships if they are tiny, chota ships, and you can say I have more ships than you. But your tonnage tells you that you also have, while you have more ships, these are also big ships, heavy ships.
Yeah. So, for example, in terms of tonnage, since 2010, the figures show that China has, dramatically reduced the tonnage gap with the US from roughly 4 million tons to under 1.6 million tons. That's the kind of, when it comes to tonnage, the gap.
America has these humongous aircraft carriers.
Exactly. So, which means that the Chinese are not only building ships in larger numbers, but they're now building bigger and bigger ships. Now, another key technology where the Chinese are giving competition to the Americans is in technologies like the vertical launch system, the VLS missile cells, which, the Americans have an X amount of capacity to launch missiles, the vertical launch missiles. The Chinese are catching up onto that. By 2024, Chinese surface combatants deployed half the VLS cells of the US counterparts, up from just a quarter in 2019.
So within a few years.
Within a few years, in a matter of just 5 years, they've been able to go from a quarter of what the US capacity was to actually half.
So and they are closing the gap further.
And they're closing the gap further, which means that by 2030, or maybe actually even less when it comes to China, they would be matching the same capability as far as the US Navy is concerned. So
and I can tell you by that time, even by then, we'll be debating on Twitter the MRFA contract for Indian Air Force.
Absolutely. And also, besides the MRFA contract, the whole concept of the TED-BF, which is the twin engine based, twin engine
deck-based fighter. Deck-based fighter.
Yeah, the deck-based.
That's a plan to have a 2-engine aircraft like Rafale Marine to be operated from Indian aircraft carriers.
Yeah. So you can see the amount. So I'm scared looking at it. Scared would not be a right word, but I'm hugely concerned about the pace at which. And it's not just me. The US military has been expressing concern over this for a very long time. You mentioned about the report by the US government report in January. Trump has realized this. Trump is trying to put now restrictions and impose fines on container
Chinese built container ships entering American ports.
Yeah, indifferent of which flag it is hosting, right? So the US is concerned, India is also concerned, but then that's where the situation is right now.
In fact, just earlier this week, we had a Cut the Clutter episode where we quoted extensively from the testimony of Elbridge Colby, who's now nominated as the Deputy Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon for policy. And he had said that one reason he wants to go slow with American support on Taiwan is that he's not sure that if a war breaks out now, America can win. And this is a war America can't afford to lose. And he says that over the years, the gap between America and China has narrowed greatly. In fact, the balance may have already shifted in favor of the Chinese. And that's the reason he wants to buy time for the US to shore up its own military strength.
Yeah, the fact is that all these Chinese vessels are concentrated in that Indo-Pacific area, right? Whereas the American combat ships are spread across the world. So in terms of strength, the Chinese have more concentrated strength in the area they want to defend, while for the Americans, it's spread throughout.
And it may not be such a big thing in the big picture, but it's also interesting to note that Chinese shipping is not molested by the Houthis coming through Red Sea as well.
Yes.
Whereas the Americans have to have so much of naval resources committed there. Plus, they have to have naval resources committed in the Persian Gulf because of Iran support to Israel and all that. So Americans are really spread out, whereas the Chinese can concentrate everything in their areas of interest.
Absolutely. And the other, surprising element from this, and which you've mentioned earlier, is the fact that you have the American allies, Japan, France, Greece, and even Taiwan, giving orders to the Australia, to the Chinese shipyards. Now, what it is essentially doing is that these countries are now funneling billions of dollars of revenue into entities that are central to this growing naval might of China.
And finally, Snehesh, since we talked about civil military fusion, CSSC, it gets all these commercial orders. It also does all of the naval shipbuilding. How does the balance work out there? How much money do they get from commercial building, shipbuilding, and how much from naval? Because if you see other dual purpose companies like Boeing, for example, Boeing makes commercial jetliners. It also makes top of the line fighter aircraft and other military aircraft as well. How does the division between civil and military revenues work for, say, a company like Boeing and CSSC?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and that's also, the numbers speak for themselves. For example, in 2023, only 23% of revenue of the CSSC came from defense, which means that the rest came from their commercial orders.
And these commercial orders were coming from other major, biggest economies in the world, most of which happen to be China's adversaries.
Absolutely. Right. And in the case of, usually traditionally, if you look at defense companies or large conglomerates who are into both civil and defense, the defense would play a major role to close to about 50, 55, 56% of the revenue.
What's it like, say, for Boeing?
So for Boeing, the report mentions that for Boeing, over 40%, despite the fact that there are actually only two major commercial airline manufacturers, Airbus and Boeing. Despite that,
never mind their problems with 737 MAX. Those are recent, yes.
So despite all that, over 40% of Boeing's revenue comes from the defense contract. So that is the difference, the scale at which the Chinese shipyard is operating. Only 23% of their revenue comes from defense, while rest comes from commercial contracts. These commercial contracts actually subsidize China's investment into growing plan and also brings in technology, as you mentioned.
And they enable scale which has not been seen in the history of shipbuilding. At least
Absolutely.
Not in the post-Second World War history of shipbuilding. So that is the picture that we thought we'll share with you. And I'm sorry I'm doing it on Holy Eve. But facts are facts. They don't change. In any case, have a happy Holi.
Happy Holi.